All right, my analysts, now we've talked a little bit about network indicators. Now let's pivot over to the other half of the coin in basic dynamic analysis, which is host-based indicators. So there are a number of tools that you can use for this, and one of the first that I like to go to is a little tool called Procmon. You can go ahead and just search Procmon and click on that icon. And this is part of the sysinternals software suite from Microsoft. And we will be using the sysinternals suite a lot when it comes to host indicators. And it's something I recommend that you try to practice and get really, really good with, is all of the tools in the sysinternals suite. So we can agree to the end user license agreement, and we are given this kind of very busy looking UI. Now, the power of Procmon is that it can tell you information about certain processes and what those processes are doing at any given point. And sometimes, if you couldn't tell from the amount of information on the screen, it is a lot to cover. And so what I want to introduce you to is the most powerful feature in Procmon, which is this little filter icon right here. So what we want to do is click on the filter icon, and we can start to put in filter criteria that will just give us the information that we really want out of this section of the analysis. Now, we don't know a whole lot about this binary, but we do know what the process name is going to be. And the reason we know that is because it's the name of the file. So if we take this process name, and we're going to drop down this drop-down menu right here, and we'll go to the process name, which is right here. And you can say is, and there are a bunch of different criteria you can use. So if you don't exactly know it, you might be able to do contains, but we do know exactly what it is. So we're going to set this to is, and then you can set this to the name of the file when it detonates, which is malware.unknown.exe. And then we click add. So when we click apply and OK to this, the filter criteria will set, and now we don't actually see any events yet. But that's okay because we haven't detonated this piece of malware yet. So what we're going to do is double click and run and pay close attention to what happens here. And we can almost see it in chronological order because we can sort by time. We can also sort by things like path or operation. And so what we really get a good idea of is what the process name is, which we already know. We also get the process ID, which is right here. We get the operation, what exactly is this process doing? And we get the path, where in the file system or the operating system is this interaction taking place? Now, the operation column right here is also one of the most important things that we can look at. So we can take a filter criteria of operation contains. And what if we want to see everything that has to do with files? We can say add to files, and then we can look at, okay, we've got create file, we've got query name information file, we've got read file, and we can expand this path field here and start to take a look at all of the interactions that are taking place. So a lot of these are going to be create file or query file from some of the DLLs that are loading into the binary when it runs. But some of the interactions here can be quite interesting if we take a look at things like, well, what are the files that are actually being created by this process? And if we scroll down far enough, we can actually find an indicator that correlates with one thing that we found earlier during our basic static analysis. Remember that from the strings here, we found this file path that is C users public documents and then this kind of random .dat.exe right here. So we could actually take that and apply that as a filter, and it turns out that that's in here as create file. And so if we expand out the details, we can see that there was a successful file creation of this file located in C users public documents and then the name. Well, sure enough, if we go to the file explorer and we go into that path, so C, we go to users, we go to public, and we go to documents, well, there it is right there. So this is another indicator that we've picked up. Now, this definitely wasn't here because there's nothing in the public documents directory by default. And we can actually test this hypothesis by deleting this file and seeing if it will spawn again if we run the malware again. And sure enough, it does. So we have another indicator here. So let's go ahead and take another screenshot, and we can kind of set the stage here so that we are highlighting this right here and we're highlighting this right in here. And so what we can do is we'll move this down a little bit to get a better screenshot right there. And let's go ahead and we will take a screenshot of this and copy this to our clipboard. And we'll bring up our notes again. And for our host indicators, so we'll say host indicators, we can paste this screenshot in and maybe resize it a little bit just so that it's a little easier to read. We're starting to make progress and unravel what this malware might be capable of. Now, we know that it's reaching out to a particular URI, and we know that it creates a file on the desktop somewhere. Now, remember, this file that we've created is going to be the standard inetsim executable. So remember, if we go to like doesn'texist.com/evil.exe, remember that inetsim is going to serve us up a binary that just says this is the inetsim default GUI binary. Now, we can kind of start to hypothesize about what this piece of malware might do. If it downloads a file and lands it in the file system from a remote address, we might be able to hypothesize that this is like a malware dropper, that it's downloading something from another location and dropping it to infect the system with a second stage payload. So we're not going to know exactly what this payload was unless we're able to go to this particular URL. And unfortunately, we won't be able to do that. But maybe on another system that is internet connected, we can go see if this is serving out something at favicon.ico. Now, something else I want to point out is that this is kind of a little bit of tradecraft. The favicon is that tiny little, and I'll bring it up for you so you can see. The favicon is this tiny little icon that's up here that you'll see next to a website title in maybe the tab like you see right here. So for inetsim, it's got this little SIM and it's a square. Now, cyber criminals and APTs and malicious cyber actors like to abuse this fact because anytime you go to a website like this, you are inherently requesting the favicon.ico. And if it exists, it's served up to you so that it can render in the browser right here. And if it doesn't exist, then nothing happens. It's just a 404. So we see something like this, that this favicon.ico is being requested, but there's something being written to the file system. We just don't quite have enough information to correlate these two things. So it looks pretty promising to hypothesize that favicon.ico might be the second stage payload. It's requesting to this web resource and writing it to the file system. So we've got plenty of things to look at now as far as what this malware might be doing. So let's move on with more host-based indicators.